Hello, everyone. It's Cameron Vesey, the Spokane Experience. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't usually make videos quite this late at night, but why not? So, I'm not trying to grift, I hope. Like I said, I've been watching Loury and John McWhorter for 6 or 7 months now, nine months, and I'm really appreciative of everything they talk about and the manner, and they're not the same. You know, they're definitely not an echo chamber, but they're good friends, and I enjoy that a lot. I enjoy when people who that's the IDW was kind of like that. Good friends who had very different views, who could express themselves without worrying about insulting or bickering. And that's what these two gentlemen do, and I love it. I have to say that my last response to these gentlemen did very well. And it could be because I used their cartoon faces as my cover piece and not because of my content, and I understand that. I'm going to try to be worthy, though, of the grift I might be involved in. Let us begin.
So I tell you, right, I saw you had a Substack, John.
I did. And I was more vigorous in that Substack than I usually am in saying a very simple thing. The idea that to be black is to need to walk around in fear of being killed by the cops is a myth. The data makes it clear that black people do not need to walk around afraid that the cops are going to kill them because of subtle racism. The data doesn't support it. And yet here we are in...
Okay, so a couple days ago, in the comment section, Glenn is an economist at Browns College. I don't think it has anything to do with it. It might be a black college, I don't know. And then John McWhorter here is a well-known linguistic at another college, professors both, big minds, great minds, educated minds, and in the comment section, here's the only problem I have with studies done by well-meaning people outside. If I was a naturalist, a nature person, and I was doing research on bears, I wouldn't be asking the bears about why they're fishing salmon or why they like honey or I don't know. I wouldn't be taking the bears report about why they mauled a deer or didn't. I don't know. That's not a good example. But if I was doing a study on corporations, and those corporations were self-reporting, and I just had to take the data the corporations were giving, you couldn't do a good study. Science doesn't work that way. You have to vet the data set somehow, right? And sometimes you can't vet it good enough to get quality data to be able to do a good research. This includes climate. I did a video earlier. I haven't posted yet, but I tried to go get the raw data that used to be available about what individual weather stations were reporting back in the day, actual dates, because I was going to compile it myself for my fan base, saying, this is how you do science, this is how you research. They've taken them down. I've got the video I can show you. You can no longer get to the individual weather sites data that you once could. I wonder why. Because if you allow people to get to the raw data and vet it themselves and decide, so the weather station in 1935 in America, in a reliable place, consistently said it's hotter than their data is saying it was. But they're saying, well, that data was taken at the wrong time of the day, so we can assume it was a little hotter because the sun was in the right position. Yeah. And they're trying to say they're better at deciding what the temperature was 70 years ago on a certain day then the people that were there with a thermometer, because thermometers haven't changed a whole lot. Mercury's mercury in 70 years. Yeah, the Aryans. And so they're rewriting the raw data. So you can't, so now if you rewrite the raw data down here, and all these scientists are using that raw data, not knowing it's been altered or whatnot, their models are not going to be accurate or correct. Okay, so now, that same philosophy, because science is a methodology, right? It's a process of doing things so that the results can be relied upon and predictable, and therefore possibly of use. All these studies done by people outside in colleges, whether they're left-leaning or they're right-leaning, are based on data given to us by the police reports written by the police, right? And whatever, good, bad, better, accurate, honest. These statistics are all based off self-reporting by the police departments with very little outside influence. You don't have somebody riding along with a cop saying, well, this is how I felt it went down when it went down. Now, so I'm hesitant when people start talking about studies of police shootings and things of this nature and trying to come to any definite conclusions. Although, I do believe I'm in total agreement with John here about, but I'm not African American, so what does it fucking matter?
Where a hideous thing has happened to a black person, and it's the kind of thing that has happened to white people too, but we never hear about it.
That's true.
Happens to a black person, national news. People are protesting, people are breaking things, people are rioting, and we're having all the usual editorials about how to be black is to walk around in fear of the cops, and how, you know, Minnesota of all places has a problem with race, etc. And it's just not real. And the reason that I'm mentioning this now is because we're on kind of a year anniversary. It was about a year ago, if you talk about spring, and I think actually the month of April or May, that we first had a conversation about Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, where things took a turn. I think our audience really jumped. It seemed to strike a chord with a certain number of listeners or watchers that we were trying to address the George Floyd thing squarely. And I asked at the time, and I genuinely didn't know, this is just a year ago, I said, would it have happened if he were white? And I made up Nils Olson, this white person. And it turns out that Tony Timpa is that person. I didn't know. I heard from people who heard me ask. Now I have tried to spread his name as far and wide as I can. But the truth was that there had been a white George Floyd. And we tried to talk about this sort of thing. And here we are now.
Can I just interject something? I want to make sure Peter Moskos gets credit, the criminologist at the City University of New York's John Jay College of Criminal Justice, because he's the guy that brought that to my attention, who brought it to your attention, and had a chronicle, not just of Tony Temple, but of many other cases. I mean, for every, Tamir Rice, for every guy shot in a Walmart holding a weapon or whatever that's unloaded.
But okay, I just want to caveat this real quick. Tamir Rice. Those police broke police procedure. A lot of it had to do with dispatch. Dispatch failed to tell these gung-ho officers that it was a 12-year-old boy with a BB gun, and the dispatcher had that knowledge and failed to convey that. So there's a breakdown of the system. But in my opinion, and I've seen the video, these cops roared in there without backup, too fast, to a lone person in a park, and in 1.2 seconds, shot that person down. He wasn't even committing a crime. 12-year-old with a BB gun is a misdemeanor. 1.2 seconds, whether that was a white person or a black person or whoever it was, those cops were wrong, in my opinion. The guy in the Walmart, Jesus Christ. Here's the problem with the headphone generation. But whatever, guy's bebop, he's on the phone with his mom, and he grabs a rifle that is for sale in Walmart, and Walmart calls the cops on him. It wasn't like he loaded it. There's no ammo around. Anyways, these things that have happened to black people shouldn't fucking happen. And I think we all agree on that, but I just had to put that out there.
There's a white guy that had the same fate, et cetera. I just want to make sure Peter got credit for that.
Very important, yes. Peter and I have become friends, actually. And this is what bothers me about all of this. What you and I are talking about now is simple fact. And what I say in the Substack, because I've said several times in writing now, is that, yes, black people are killed 2.5 times more than our representation in the population, but black people are also 2.5 times more likely to be poor, and being poor attracts the cops to you.
Okay. This is where, as a scientific mind, I find that awfully convenient. Wow. So, blacks, what do you say? Let's,
are talking about now is simple fact. And what I say in the Substack, because I've said several times in writing now, is that, yes, black people are killed 2.5 times more than our representation in the population, but black people are also 2.5 times more likely to be poor, and being poor attracts the cops. People are also 2.5 times more likely to be poor, and being poor attracts the cops to you. That's not fair, but it's also true. And yet, here we are a year later.
So, you couldn't hear that word very well, but they're 2.5 times more likely to have an interaction with the cop. And they're 2.5 more times likely to be shot than the representation in the population. That's convenient. It seems to me that those numbers match up. Because what that's saying is that all races are the same. All demographic of races from New York to California to Wisconsin and Utah are the same. And I find that hard to believe. First of all, I find it hard to believe that white poor people in the Appalachians are just as passive or just as aggressive as white people in the hood in LA. I find that hard to believe. I believe that. Now I don't know. This is just something I'm positing off the top of my head, that people in the ghetto in urban areas are going to be more aggressive towards police in any encounter than white people in more rural areas. I don't know that to be fact. I'm just positing that. I'm saying that Hispanic people, whether it's first generation or undocumented workers or undocumented immigrants, whatever, might have a tendency to engage police officers in a different way than some other population. I don't know. It's just awfully convenient. 2.5 times and 2.5 times. So, I don't know if it's been doctored. Maybe it's just been fudged a little here and a little there. But as a questioning mind, as somebody who knows statistics pretty well, demographics, I'd say, man, not sure I could trust that number, even if it's the statistical fact from the police who report on themselves. I would want to see the raw data. Where's it coming from? Oh, is this coming from what the police say the interactions are? So how do we know some desk jockey in between the police reports, let's say, I don't know. I'm just saying, I'm not sure I trust the raw data.
Here that the way the national conversation goes is such that facts like that are simply not allowed in the conversation. People read these things and ignore them. People read those things and say something against them that doesn't really make any sense. It's just considered to be unsayable outside of certain circles. And I'm not saying that I'm censored. I can say whatever I want, fine. But it's not the way respectable people are allowed to talk about this sort of thing. People just have their ears closed. And that, to me, is evidence of a conversation that's very, very fake. And so if I just say, no, to be black is not to have to worry more about the cops. No, it's just not true. Is considered heretical. it's treated as heresy. It's not treated as a fact that's refutable. It's just heresy.
Sure.
I'm disgusted with this because it's at the point where that is the main aspect of race that we talk about.
I agree to that.
And it's all just a fake conversation.
Yep.
And I say in the Substack piece, I'm done. Very simply, I just say, anytime now that you hear about cops killing a black person, it's a horrible thing. Remember that happened to a white person too, and almost certainly more than one. And just have it as a mental exercise. Think, would a cop not do that to a white person? And the truth is, all you have to do is look in the Washington Post database, and you'll see that cops have done that to a white person.
Washington Post database. Not saying it's wrong, but I wouldn't fucking trust it.
Where brutally, the media just never said anything about it beyond wherever it lives.
That's true, though.
You just don't hear about it. And so you have these poor people
plenty of cases
walking around thinking that the cops are always killing black men, sobbing in the streets, including the relatives of people who get killed like this, which is a terrible thing, who genuinely aren't aware that it happens to people named Dylan too, because the news never mentions it. I think this is such a tragedy of our national conversation about something as important as race. It's just broken. It's fake, it's broken, and it's...
Yeah, and that's my philosophy is it's a classism thing, more so than a racism thing. Not to say, but there's of course it's difficult, it's complicated, but I like to approach problems holistically, as you know, as it affects in a manner that it affects the most people. And I believe a lot of these problems are more of a poverty, lifestyle, demographic than it is race at all. And I'm sure Glenn and or John, one of them might agree with me a little bit. I don't know. They can't answer right now. Come on.
Well, at this point, how do you feel about this?
I want to get your reaction to a couple of thoughts I have here. I don't think your critique goes nearly far enough. First of all, it's not poverty, it's criminality. It's not poverty. It is true statistically that you see more trouble with the police amongst poor people than not, but there are poor communities in which you don't see this. It is criminal.
So, now, that's not, when Glenn wants to go deeper, I don't think he's going deeper enough, though. He's kind of doing it in a shallow way. What he just said there about there's some poor communities where this doesn't take place. Well, that could be totally because the cops are trained in a different manner and go about their business in a different way. It's not so simple as just the poor people are acting right so they don't get shot. So if these poor people acted right in this district or this area, they wouldn't get shot. No. There's two sides of this coin, and each coin in each side in each area is also different because we're a population of 350 million with 50 states and 51 states, 50 states. 50, oh, wow. Okay, you didn't hear that. Yeah. So the way they police in San Francisco, in the poor areas, isn't the same that they police in Baltimore poor areas. And I'm not saying it's better or worse, or which population is better or worse. I'm saying there's a two-sided head to this thing where somebody always argues just one side of it. And no, Glenn, maybe so, Glenn, possibly so, Glenn, but just because these poor people over here aren't getting shot at the same rate as other people because they're obeying the laws, maybe those cops in this area aren't enforcing the laws in the same manner they're doing it where. So it seems like there's more criminality over here because the cops in this area are more Gestapo.
It is the behavior of people that calls the attention of the police. That's point number one. Point number two, it's not only coming into contact with the police, it's resisting the police. In other words, it's behavior conditional on contacting the police. If you comply with the police directives, you don't get killed. If you don't run, you don't get chased. If you don't resist arrest, you don't have to be restrained. So the conversation is fake at a much deeper level than what you suggest. we are not actually even coming to terms with the ultimate root causes of what's going on, which are ascribed to racism, but which in fact are the vastly disproportionate overrepresentation of African Americans amongst violent criminals, and the disease of leading people to believe that they can resist the police officer in those circumstances in which they come into contact with police without consequence. That was point number one.
Two.
Point number two is, why
Point
a
number
fake
three.
conversation? Because the media abet it and flourish in the context of it, and because demagogues.
Okay, so I want to add something to his first point and his second first point. No, the second first point. The second point. So I've been watching John and Glenn for quite a while now. And a lot of times they talk about the underdevelopment of the African American community as far as education and thriving and stuff like that. So they agree. So I'm putting forth what they've said before in a different perspective, or on different, as it deserves the development of children in schools and reading and school, black school, whatever. The pressure to have African American children excel in certain areas of school are not emphasized by the parents, or as how many African American children are had in out of wedlock, things of this nature, is the number one reason that's holding African Americans back in our society, because we're such a technological driven society, all sorts of reasons, and that the family unit makes for stronger, better kids, all sorts of, okay, so they've put that forth. So I go to Glenn on his second point, about how they're involved more often, don't resist arrest, don't run from the cops. Okay, so yes, it would be nice if the last two generations were brought up in a manner where they respected authority in a way where they didn't feel like running from the cops was an option or a necessity. But that's not the reality we live in, Glenn, and that's a problem. So, because we live in a reality where, white and black, there are fatherless boys who have no respect for authority, who are running amok, and basically when they see a cop will run over a misdemeanor or for a misdemeanor warrant or a felony warrant, and there's no way to, or they might just run because they don't want to talk to a cop because they don't respect authority. They're raised in an improper family unit. That's the reality we live in. So, can we justify shooting white or black men down because they were unlucky enough to grow up in a broken home? Because that's what happens when you grow up in a broken home, or a non-nuclear family of a single mother. Boys tend to not have much respect or are not socially adjusted in a manner where they respect authority, and so they run or they resist. Should they be gunned down for resisting arrest because of poor parenting? Because that's where the root of it is. But you can't just say, well, they shouldn't resist arrest, so they got what they're coming. No. We live in a reality where, unfortunately, all these young American boys, black or white or Hispanic, are growing up in homes that don't raise proper men, boys, right? And so they're going to do this over and over. They're going to do this over and over. Shooting them down and killing them isn't justifiable because they're resisting arrest, in my opinion.
Have a financial and a political interest in fostering it.
Yes.
Demagogues. Maxine Waters traveled from
Holy
Washington,
shit.
D.C. to Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, in order to inspire crowds to resist, because if a police officer isn't convicted, we're going to be mad as hell and we're going to burn this motherfucker down. That's not a quote, but that's what she was doing. A member of Congress. Now, suppose a Republican, pro-Trump person, in the context of a disputed election had done...
What the fuck? Glenn, January 6th, they tried to ring Trump up on inciting a riot for much, much, much less provocative, insightful language.
What the narrative would be. I am unable to find any commentary anywhere in the press, except right-wing sources,
Glenn!
critical of Maxine Waters' demagogic incitement of violence. Finally, mobs around courthouses are a catastrophe and an affront to all of our rights, including Derek Chauvin's. Mobs around courthouses demanding that defendants be convicted, irrespective of the evidence, because we all saw the video, are contemptible and they deserve to be denounced. The former president of the United States, Barack Hussein Obama, refuses to say the simple words, "Let justice prevail here, it's the jury's call." Refuses to say, "Don't resist the cops and you won't end up in a violent confrontation with them." Instead says, we have to rethink policing from the ground up, okay? So the aberrant...
Obama. He's kind of right, though, but it's not policing. So this is kind of where I wanted to get into this conversation more so, because I've heard the first part. It's the unions, baby. It's the unions. It's the unions.
Behavior of a relatively few vicious criminals.
That's why I like Glenn.
Who end up resisting the...
The reason I like Glenn is we're passionate. We're both passionate.
Police officers and finding themselves in trouble is about to cause this country to descend into riotous and arsonist mayhem. And the organs of responsible journalism refuse to simply say, the cops are doing their job and they're mainly in the right. The cops are mainly in the right. No, they're not perfect, but they are also not the problem here.
What? Why you let Glenn? Yes, they are part of the problem. It's a complicated problem. You can't. This is what bothers me. The pushback or the denial or this side's to blame. No, we're all to blame here. You, me, John, Glenn, everybody. We're all in this together, buddy. Including the cops, including the poor people, including the rich people. You can't say, well, the cops aren't to blame here because the justice system, the rehab system, the mental health system, the political system, the societies, churches, youth groups, pastors, we're all part of this. The cops are to blame also, to some degree, whatever that degree ends up being or isn't, or we never find out, they have culpability here.
We have a very sophisticated conversation about this in a way, because the idea is you should be able to sustainably resist arrest without being killed.
Yep.
And I understand where that's coming from.
I do too.
The cops could definitely do better on that. I don't know if you would agree with that, but there is an issue there. However, it's telling that no one says stop resisting. And the reason that we're not supposed to say stop resisting is because that seems like it's giving in to the man. So we're not going to, actually comply with what these people are imposing, because it's the white supremacist system. So no, it's the system that has to change. So you don't say resist. It's kind of like with the voting laws, where the idea is to say, and I agree with this in principle, stop, coming up with these, made up notions. Boy, I've caught a lot for saying that here. But to be honest, folks, I haven't seen anything to contradict my basic sense that there is a nasty pragmatism involved here rather than fighting anything that would be considered an actual problem under other circumstances. I'm sorry, I've read, I've listened to you, I just don't see it. And I'm not being religiously resistant. Yes, you changed that, but then too few people seem to say, black people just get IDs, which I have said too. That you fight against it by just saying everybody get a goddamned ID. But that's not talked about as much because the idea is that you have to address the racism. Okay, so that's what this is. So we're not supposed to say, wow, Daunte Wright would have been better off if he had just stayed outside of the car. We're just not supposed to talk about that. Yes, that is that's a problem because a lot of these people would be alive if they didn't resist. Yeah.
Daunte Wright is supposed to have been killed because he had an air freshener dangling from his rearview mirror. He's supposed to have been killed because he had a minor warrant outstanding for his arrest for a serious charge. And the implication is we're over-policing. He shouldn't have been pulled over because his tags were expired. This only happens to black people. The cops are patrolling the communities looking to inflict, et cetera, on black people. It is not just phony, it's a lie. These things are lies. They are intentional distortions. Where is the media? Where is the press? This social justice journalism debases the currency and actually abets the mayhem. You're going to hear about the Capitol insurrection riot of January 6th again and again and again in the weeks ahead because, God help us, if the jury inside that courthouse doesn't come to the decision that the mob wants, then there are going to be people who will say, of course they're going to loot. There are going to be people who will say, you mean to say black lives don't matter as much as property? There are people who are going to say, of course they will throw projectiles at police officers because they're angry. Some of them are members of the United States Congress. And they're going to say this. So we're in deep doo-doo here, man. This is not just an intellectual cul-de-sac or somehow an ethical or moral mistake. This is political disaster that we're flirting with. And it needs to be opposed, not just by people like us who have essentially zero influence, but by the people who
got more influence than I do, guys.
Command the heights of the American public's attention. Political, journalistic, entertainment. I mean, the narrative here is completely off. I'm going to repeat myself. Criminality, violent criminality is at the root of this issue. And blacks' vast overrepresentation amongst those committing violent criminal offenses lies at the root of this issue. Now, we could go into why that is, but God damn it, the cops did not cause it.
Okay. So here's an aspect of police enforcing that it's a I don't know if anyone who's ever talked about it this way. I've got family that was military. They wouldn't take me. I was already in trouble at 8 years old. I've got friends that were in the military. I love my military. I stand behind my military as much as I can for a paraplegic. All right, so here's a problem with the police force that I'm not sure how to rectify, and I'm not saying it wasn't done on purpose. It was not planned. It's unforeseen. It's unforeseen consequences. So you have a soldier, like Dan Crenshaw or some other, Jocko or maybe a little less, who maybe not quite as gung ho, but they served their country well. They were trained well. They went to Iraq. They went to Afghanistan. They did tours. They saw some fire. They saw some hell, and they come back to the United States. Well, what fits their skill set the best? Door-to-door sales? Youth group? I don't know. You see where I'm going. There's a natural fit for ex-military who are dispatched honorably. They're great people. Absolutely nothing, but they've been trained a certain way in the military. Okay? That you're not going to shake loose. Okay. So they become police officers, and they're on the beat, and they do a good job, and they protect their guys, and The problem is they've got a us versus them mentality from the military. Rightly so. They bring this attitude into our police force. Unknowingly, not willing, not trying to. It's part of them. It's ingrained in them. And as they start taking over positions in the police force, they can't help but to bring a military tactics into our police force. This could have started after World War II. This could have, after Nam. It's been a slow integration of worthy soldiers coming back into our police forces that may have, and I believe it is responsible for a lot of the drastic changes in how police interact with the community. Us versus them versus us. I was just reading a police evaluation from 1996 about the Spokane Police Department, which is where I'm from, and it talked about how before Terry Magnan, a local police chief we had, how there was how the police in Spokane were not intermingled with this community. They didn't get out of their car unless it was to write a ticket or engage a criminal, ever. Things of this nature. They'd have their own private parties, their own bars, their own little society. That I'm not a research expert. I don't know. This is my own theorizing how I could see where comrades in arms in the military could come back and have a bond as police that even other police wouldn't necessarily feel, certainly civilians wouldn't understand, and that gets integrated into police through osmosis, and then into the training, and then next thing you know, you have police officers who have never seen combat, they don't understand that these combat type training was designed for enemies, not American citizens. I have this theory about being an American criminal should be different than being an Iraqi enemy. That's an American criminal. He has American rights, and we should do everything we can to straighten that American criminal out before shooting him. Anyways, it's something no one never talks about. I've never heard this anywhere at all talked about. Anyways.
Family? You want to talk about values? You want to talk about hip-hop culture? You want to talk about victimized mentality where everything gets interpreted through a lens of
yes.
My ancestors were enslaved? You want to talk about the lack of responsibility in this community?
So I'm totally agreeing with Glenn, though, on all that.
Why is a 13-year-old walking on the streets of Chicago at 2 a.m. with a pistol?
Okay, I agree with all that. The problem is, that's where we're at. So do we just shoot them all? Do we just give police a free rein? Hey, just shoot them all until they're gone because we can't fix the problem any other way. Since it's not the police's fault, like Glenn likes to say here, right? Well, but the reality is, Glenn, we've got all sorts of kids that are like that are going into men. Should we just shoot them all then? Fuck it. When they commit a crime and they resist, blam, you're dead. Is that your solution, Glenn? But no, it is a problem. The development of the African American community needs to be addressed. The corrupt media needs to be addressed. These things are pushing us to the brink of disaster, more so than any individual precinct, department, cop shooting. I would agree with that.
You think the cops caused that?
No.
The root of this problem is a failure of the social development of African Americans, which reflects pathological deficiencies in some part of this culture. The cops didn't cause it, and white supremacy didn't cause it either.
True.
Tell me I'm wrong.
You're not wrong on that one.
Well,
you're not on that
I
one.
would steer away from that word pathological because it's
I kinda
code
was-
in some.
I kind of was a psychosis, a little bit mass psychosis more so. Pathological is along the psychos, like Jeffrey Dahmer and Killer. Yeah, I would stay away from that too a little bit. But hey,
There are people who are going to hear you say that, and they're going to say that you're saying there's something almost genetically wrong with black people, and they
Yes.
enjoy policing thought for somebody who says something like that, and they're going to shout
Yes.
it. So
Yes.
I wouldn't use that word. But other than that, yes. And I am so disappointed at this point, more than I've been in a very long time. It's funny how we're supposed to apply our intelligence. And so, for example, it's clear from studies that the cops tend to be meaner to black people. That's been shown that black people are more likely to be pushed up against a wall, spoken to in a certain way. That's clear. And something I would also add to what you just said is that there is the very important study that shows that black people are pulled over less after the sun goes down, that there does seem to be a certain bias, at least in some regions, against black people in terms of who you're going to pull over. Probably subconscious, maybe not. That is there. That's there. But it's also clear from just looking at the numbers that the cops do not kill black people in disproportionate numbers. And, on the one hand, I think people find it very easy to imagine that bigotry would make you kill in a tense moment. On the other hand, I find it equally easy to imagine that killing somebody is such a big deal that whatever.
all right. So I'm just going to interject this here. This is why I don't trust those statistics. All right. Robert Sapolsky. If you want to go Google or YouTube search Robert Sapolsky and Sean Carroll. One's a particle physicist, and the other one is a renowned biologist. And I love Robert Sapolsky. Is an awesome dude. Now he's fucking far left as a motherfucker. All right, I'm just going to say, but he does a great. But it rarely corrupts his thinking. He does a good job. But he talks about a study. The part of the brain that is responsible for aggression, amygdala, not the hippocampus, but the amygdala, the amygdala. Can't do it. Won't find it. All right. So this part of the brain, the part of the brain that is responsible for aggression. All right. If you flick pictures in front of a person and a white person and an African American or Latino or some other race in front of them, the aggressive side will become very active before the viewer is consciously aware of it. So, to say a white officer wouldn't shoot African Americans at a higher rate than he would a white person, John, doesn't seem very scientific if that study by biologists in a wholly different field find that, and it goes black people with white people. It goes both ways. A black person, God, I can hear the word in my head. I can just aggressive part of the brain will become active with a white person. It goes both ways here. It's not necessarily whites against black. It's a human nature thing. The other, if an other is put in front of them, their aggressive becomes active before they're consciously aware of anything. So if that's true, it would be understandable in the line of work they do if they did tend to be a little more aggressive, and since they have a gun, that probably means death, with people of a different race. So the fact that most of the police force is white, and the fact that they come in contact with African Americans almost twice as often, you'd think that number might be 3 times as much versus 2.5. You'd think there'd be some correlation between that science and those statistics. That's why I don't trust those statistics.
Subconscious bias is, even if you've got a gun, that's the last place you're going to go, even in a tense situation, unless you're absolutely desperate. I can see the humanity of white people enough to see that as plausible. I guess that makes me a little old-fashioned, a little Martin Luther King, but yeah, I can imagine that you might be more likely to call somebody a nigger, push them up against the wall, say things, single them out on a drug search because you kind of think black people are more likely to have drugs in their car, even if they're not. But then when it comes to pulling the trigger and taking them out of this world, no, it might not go that far.
It does, John. It does. Like I just explained. But that's an intense, quick reaction. So situations where somebody has to, their levels of fear might be different. Their levels of anxiety might be different. Plus, it's another, humans are very complex. So it might not be that simple as I'm saying it. There might be far more, but I think you're wrong there, John. I think, especially when it comes to shooting somebody, because the aggressive part of the brain is what activates before you're consciously aware of it, your brain might have already decided to shoot that other. I'm serious. Go watch that Sean Carroll, Robert Sapolsky. Okay, it'll blow you away. Pardon the pun. About how your mind might have already made up its mind it's going to shoot that other long before you're consciously aware of why you're shooting that other, and it'll rewrite why you did it. Okay. Enough of that.
What the data show, and yet we are not to say anything about it. You are not to talk about it. We're supposed to predicate all of these actions and editorials and statements and things that we tell our kids based on something that isn't true, while in the meantime we're
something that the statistics say, as they are currently reported, isn't true, John.
supposed to do this very sophisticated mental work of understanding how all white people are complicit in something called white supremacy and must work to battle it, even though the white supremacy, according to this paradigm, never really changes. We have to wrap our head around that racism is systemic. We've got to do the work. But when it comes to this issue of the cops and black people, suddenly everything is simple. Suddenly, it's just that the cops keep killing black people because slavery, Jim Crow, redlining.
Right.
And that's all we're supposed to do. We're being required to be stupid. And damn it, Glenn, the 90s, when I started thinking, I thought everything was getting better since the 60s, and my ears seem to think that we still live in 1940. Why? And I'm not inclined to say that everybody's just crazy. And I was thinking, what is it that makes these people exaggerate the way they do? And it was the cops. I've known this since the late 90s. It's the OJ thing that explains all of that. And here we are. I wrote in Losing the Race. I wrote, all these things that people are talking about, the church burnings, the wage gap, all of it is exaggerated except the cops. People tend to know that. I said, yeah, the cops is still a problem, but it doesn't justify the tenor of the way people are talking.
Okay.
But that's what I thought. Then I talked to you in 2016, and I say, come on, Glenn, it's clear there's a cop problem. What's the list of white people who get killed? And you told me. That was the most iconic moment I've ever had with you. That's when I learned about Peter Moskos. Now, here we are 5 years later, and I get the feeling, Glenn, that there's nothing to be done. I get the feeling it's part of being an intelligent American to be fake about race and the cops.
No. What? I'm going to leave that alone. I don't know why I said it.
Nothing we say will help. And we're just two people, but the facts are in black and white, so to speak. And it is the job of the good reading American to pretend that we didn't say anything. And so I'm almost done. You can be quite sure, for example, we've got these professional haters. We've got these hate watchers who sit and watch us for a whole hour. They watch every one of our shows, and then they go on social media and talk about what jackasses we are. Guys, get a hobby. Do you realize that have you ever had a hamster? Have you ever bred aquarium fish? Have you ever built a ship in a bottle? Have you ever tried to teach yourself Hungarian? Kayaking, something. Get something else to do. But the thing is, what they're doing, they're spraying for heresy. They do have a hobby. They are showing that we are Galileo. They have to show the public what idiots we are. And nevertheless, they will never say anything about what Coleman has written, about what I have written, about...
Coleman is a strange individual. Fucking brilliant. But I don't know, Coleman, man. I watched Coleman talk about why he was going to vote for Biden, and it was like, wow, whoa. I mean, I'm not saying I agree with him, but I never. The reasons Coleman voted for Biden were, I don't know. I don't know if it was just creative, or genius, or right or wrong. I didn't agree with him, but yeah, Coleman is something else. Coleman is a he's going places. That mind is, he's got quite the mind, a great mind, a good, in all the good ways.
About what you have written, all the facts, all the statistics, as if we've never said anything. We're just jackasses, and the cops are all about killing black people and boo hoo hoo, as if we never said anything, as if there's no other way to look at it. There's an utter numbness, blindness on this topic, and I've noticed now it's been this way for 30 years. You've seen it longer. This isn't going to change, is it? I think we just have to deal with it. There's going to be this myth about black people and the cops for at least 50 years. It looks like that's the way it's going to be.
Well, so I'm going to see if I can't get Glenn or John to watch this to see if I'm not trying to be a grifter. I like John and Glenn a lot, and I'm all alone in my room, and I don't have any hobbies, but I'm not a hater. So if you like this, tell John and Glenn if you know them. I'm going to try to leave them a comment about what you think. Do I add much to this conversation? Do I take away from the conversation? Am I a grifter? Am I attractive? Are you a single white female? Would you like to go out for some coffee? I did not say that. All right, guys. Have a good day. Oh, wrong way.